So let's see a new case for interactions. Okay, so we can call this either the fog gates or doors or whatever. The logic is almost exactly the same. Okay, I do not have an animation that we are opening the door, however, so ignore that. We're going to play a different animation, and we're simply going to trigger an event, or basically open a door or whatever. So the same logic we are using for the pickable objects, which we are using an interface to tell us that this is an interaction. Okay. So we're going to do exactly the same thing. So let's say, let's go under triggers. Let's say over here, let's do, let's call this, yeah, I guess you can call this door hook or whatever. Well, technically doors and the fog gates aren't the same thing. But yeah, by 99% they are, however. And I think now, since we are not using anywhere else the sharp accent namespace, we can just rename all of it to sharp accent, and we might have an error here and there, and it will have to re-import everything. But everything seems to be working. Okay, so we have our door hook, which we need to add the I interactable, and we need to implement the interface. Okay, then let's close that. So for that we need to, of course, assign the interaction type, and we're going to return that. So on interact, we're basically going to be playing an animation. So we could say input manager controller dot play target animation. Let's say open door or something. Then is interacting, of course, it's true, false, and the rest can just stay 0. So this will basically give us the same logic. But what else we can do here is we can have either a different animator, let's say the door animator, or pretty much anything else you might want to have. And we can also say door animator dot play open. Okay, or crossfade, but I think just play will do fine. So that will be your interactions. Now, of course, we do not want to be interrupted when we are playing this animation. So the easiest way to do this will be to just close your collider. Okay, but I think if we close our collider, first of all, let's go inside our controller. This controller, and let's see, we have a collider somewhere over here, or maybe we don't. Yeah, I think we don't. We all have our own our parry and control colliders, so we are missing the capsule collider that basically keeps us off the ground. Okay, this one. Now if we set this to trigger, since we are holding the character off the ground, if we set this to trigger, we're basically still off the ground, but we can go through walls like that. Okay, because it's the raycast that keeps us afloat, not the collider. So that really simplifies things, because we can now have the capsule collider as trigger. Okay, so let's add a public collider, controller collider, and on init Well, actually, let's just drag and drop this from the inspector. So now, although, why bother? Let's just do this. We don't need this to be open. We can just say hide inspector. What? We can just do on init get component collider. Okay, I'm using get component, so I get the collider that is on the same object as me. For the parry collider, we don't even need to assign that as well. All we have to do is on init, and let's see where else we're using this. Parry collider, okay. Parry frame count, okay. So that only happens if he's active, okay? But we kinda need to set the start on this. So on awake or on start, what are we using? Start. Oh, come on. Yeah, on init, we're not using start. Then we can say parry collider equals get component parry collider dot game object. But this needs to be get component in children. Okay. So the other thing that we could do is if init runs before set weapons, which it does, then with our unarmed collider, we could just do unarmed collider equals get component in children not damage collider. Damage collider will be the same, but we do not know if it's the correct weapon. So we'll just say get component in children weapon hook dot game object, and we know that it's the same object. Okay. Awesome. So why are we using? Are we using this damage collide? I think we're not even using this one actually. Yeah, we're not using this one. We're using the weapon hook. Okay, so that's even one less thing that we need. Awesome. Okay, so now we have our parry and all of that. So one thing that we need to make sure is that if you're interacting, if you're not interacting, then your collider should never be triggered if you're not interacting. Okay, if you're interacting, then we have a little bit more leeway, so we can do whatever we want over there. So just going to say that. So let's just do an event. Items and actions. Let's do this after the combos, which we can say public void all open door. Okay. So we're going to say play target animation, and we can actually just pass the animation from the game object, so we can reuse this for even a fog wall. We're simply going to just make him forward on a fog wall. Okay, so play target animation, anim, true, false. Okay, then controller collider dot is trigger equals false, is true. Then controller collider, not controller collider, then we're going to say that is interacting is true as well. Although I think there is no need for this, because is interacting is set from here. So here's another thing we can do. Is interacting can be a get okay, can just be this. So we are always getting the is interacting state. The only downside to this is that every time we're accessing this, which could be a lot in one frame, we're going to be going through the animator. So it's best to avoid that. Okay, it's best to avoid that and just use it once, update it once inside the frame. So I'm just setting this onto easy interacting because this might run before our own update, so we still need to treat it like we are interacting. Now, on the door hook, we're not going to be playing this, we're simply going to be saying input.controller.play or on open door. And you know what, why even call it that? On interact we could just rename this, but first of all we can just assign an animation, target anim, let's say open door, and we can rename this to on interact animation. Okay, target animation. And for this one you're just going to also play the door animator for this. Okay, so you could just say if door animator not equals null, play that animation. So let's go and test this out. But one more thing that we should do is on the controller, in the on hit or the on damage, if controller collider dot is trigger, then return. Okay, because we're taking so that if our controller collider is a trigger, then we're probably interacting with something that we do not want to be interrupted, such as the open chest, open doors, go through fog walls, and so on and so on. Okay, that's how I believe, at least for fog walls, you want it to be trigger. Your collider, you want it to be a trigger so that you can pass through the fog wall and you do not have anyone following you through that fog wall. Okay, so a little bit of setup we need to do. We need one animation that we're going to just say that, you know, it's the door open animation, which I do not have, so I'm just going to use any animation. Let's see, that's an icon. Let's see. I guess we have this. Equip weapon, get up, no. Don't know whatever that is, but it's pretty ugly. Yeah, you know what? For this one, let's just use point forward as open door. Okay, then let's assign something that can be our wall, our door actually, not wall. Okay, I don't know, imagine something like that, and maybe copy one of that, bring it down here. I know, it's perfect. Okay, so that will be our simple door, and this needs an animator if you want to, of course. So let's see, handle interaction or door hook in this case. We can say open door. Yeah, okay, interaction type open, which is simply going to play animation. And even without this, he's still going to be able to interact with this, even without the animator. But we forgot to do one thing, which we will show in a bit. Okay, so we do not have the interaction. So let's see why we're not getting those interactions, and I think it might have to do with let's see, interactable. I think it has to do with a layer, actually. No. Okay, then let's go under our controller and let's say interactable. Are we not using this here? Where are we using it? Oh, we're using it on the input manager. That's why. Okay, so we have our overlap sphere. Load interaction. Yeah, here it is. We only have one text, so I'm just going to use the pickup text on the open as well. Now there should be a few things that we're missing, but we're going to fix them as well. Okay, so we still don't get that. That's weird. Let's see, we have our door hook. Trigger. Actually, let's attach this to Unity because we should at least return this. Okay, so this will be returning something, so let's add this over here. Let's go back, but apparently it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. So let's see, get component. Oh, interactions layer. That's why it doesn't get this, because it's over a different layer. Yeah, okay, it's a different layer. So let's see, under a pickable hook. Yeah, we set the game object layer to 50, my bad. So let's set this to 15 as well. Okay, we do not need to set up the layers to use them. We could just assign them. They just do not have a name. Okay, as you can see now, we say pickup item, and when I click that, it's basically playing an animation. One small issue, if I'm looking this way, it will play the animation like that. Obviously, we do not have the animator over there, but let's see. So let's create the animation for this, just so that we know that this is happening. And to do that, we're going to keep things simple. We're going to create this anywhere, doesn't really matter. Let's do under art. Let's say animation, not here actually. Let's say environment animations, open door, or whatever, open door 1, doesn't matter. Okay, so we need two animations. one will be the idle, so it will basically be this. So I'm going to move this down, and yeah, actually let's delete that. I'm going to copy component. Now if I want it to be correct, I should have make this as a parent object of something, because this animation now is always going to be at wall coordinates. Okay, so I'm going to move this down and paste component values. This will be your open door. This will be your idle door actually. And then let's create the open door, which you're going to start from here, and let's just put it down. Which needs to happen once you are about, let's say, 1 second. Okay, something like that. Now, two things actually. Let's rename this to closed door. And for both of these, you don't really need this to be looping. You have your closed door and your open door. So, animator. This is the idle, so this will be closed. And this will be the open animation. Okay, that's about it for this one. All we have to do now is assign the animator over here. And here's another thing that we can do. We can add this as a navmesh obstacle object that is also going to be carving this. Okay, but I think I'd rather keep this agnostic as to what it does. So here's what I'm going to try and do actually. You know what? Yeah, okay. No, actually, let's keep that. I don't know what's going to happen when this is going down. Yeah, okay, it vanishes. So that's pretty much half the job done for us. Let's see, we need to bake though. Awesome. So now the enemy will not be able to go through the door. Oops. Okay, he doesn't prefer it even if this is closer, but when I open this up, you can see that he basically is going through the door now because the door is open. Okay, so let's say we want this to be a fog gate. Just going to move this over here. Let's make this slightly huger. Okay, so if this was a fog gate, I'm going to remove the animator. We don't really need it, and I'm actually going to remove it from this one because it will move back this to this position because I baked the animation onto wall coordinates. Okay, instead of open door, I'm going to actually make him play a role for our player. Let's see, how do we, we just call it role, I believe. We don't have anything inside, and I'm going to play the role because I know he's going to move forward. Okay, that's pretty much the only logic for selecting this animation. Let's call this fog gate door. Obviously feel free to change the, actually we can't change it right now. We do have a ghost, something like that. Probably the worst case of a fog gate you ever seen, but whatever. Okay, so going to say just play the roll animation, nothing else. Hit play. And let's test it out. Okay, so we are over here. And we went through the fog gate. And the other guy, of course, he cannot attack. He's going to go through the other side. Perfect. Now let's fix the last thing we need, which is where the player should be looking at. So most likely we could just say vector 3. No, most likely we could just copy transform.rotation, actually controller.rotation, transform.rotation. We could just make it to have the same transform.rotation as this object. There's one catch to this. Actually, there's two catches. You should also know if we should be closing this public bool close after interact. We can say that it's true. So if close after interact, then you should probably be closing this object, or you could just say bool is no, actually, yeah, maybe you can just close the object or the collider. Yeah, I think the collider will make more sense. So let's do collider equals get component collider. It needs the new keyword over here. Then if close after interact, then collider.enable equals false, because you're not going to have the collider anymore. Then that means you cannot find the interaction. However, you will still be able to pass through because, of course, there's not going to be a collider. So that means there's no physics collisions and so on. So maybe we shouldn't do this with a collider. Anyway, you know what? Doesn't matter. Let's remove that. So in most cases, we could just have the controller look the same rotation as the object, but I think I'm just going to use an override. Rotation override. Just so that I can actually control where the player is going to be looking at. Okay. And actually, if rotation override is false, is null, then rotation override make this transfer. So on the door, I'm just going to leave it as it is. But here's why we need both of these, because the rotation of this transform, the forward is over here. So without a rotation override, every time I'm going and interacting, no matter where I'm looking at, he's basically going to rotate over there. Okay, so we always want to rotate inwards. So the easiest way is to just have a game object that is looking towards where we want him to look at. Okay, perfect. Without having to worry, about rotations, objects, and stuff like that. And we can actually do the same with this rotation object, since they are both looking the same way. Okay. There's a fog gate. And the only problem with the door is he's going to look like that, but in Souls games, you do not have doors that can open from either side. You can only open doors from one side. And same with fog gates. Of course, there are always one way. Okay, so you can now have your boss battles over here, and so on, and so on, and so on. So that's it for this part as well. We now have another tool in our arsenal. into creating a Souls-like game. Okay, so that's it for this part. As always, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and if you like to see more stuff, more videos, more series, more of everything, then consider supporting me on Patreon so we can keep making all of these nice things we're making. I'll see you next time.